Hey, dear reader. Thanks a lot for hooking up with the Jesus Connection today. Appreciate you coming by. I'm retired, and of course, we've got this pandemic thing going on. And sometimes it means I have a little too much time for thinking. Um, I got to thinking about last week's chat and talking about being uncomfortable doing this very thing. And I thought, God has always been calling people out to something new, something unknown, something uncomfortable. Let's think about Abraham, Moses, Ruth, Paul, all those guys. God called them out with no guarantees, no promises necessarily about as far as, just taking care of, oh, where are we going to sleep tonight? Um, it also got me to thinking about my own family, and it got me to thinking about mom and daddy when in 1963 we were a five-person family in a small town in Georgia, probably lower middle class family, that God called out to come all the way to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. My dad was going to go to school there, and it was quite the quite the honor for him to be chosen. And for us kids, I mean, I was in grade school. My brother was in grade school. It was an adventure. It's like, whoa, we're gonna get to meet Dorothy and see the Wizard of Oz and maybe see some Indians. And I know that's not politically correct, but that's what we were saying back in 1963. And maybe meet Matt Dillon, not the cool Matt Dillon from the Ocean's movies, but Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty from Gunsmoke. Wow, it's gonna be great. And it was great. It was a big adventure. All 1,019 miles driving out here in a station wagon. And then reality set in, and we realized, oh my gosh, our friends aren't here, our cousins aren't here, our church isn't here. The culture's a lot different than what we were used to. The climate was different. We'd never seen snow. We'd never really seen snow. So a lot of things that it's like, what? But we don't know how to respond. We don't know what we're supposed to be doing here. I bet your family's got some calling stories that are similar, dear reader. I bet you or someone in your family's been called to do something they weren't quite comfortable with. As I was writing the Jesus Connection, I wasn't really focused on the disciples as much as I was focusing on a new perspective on Jesus, looking beyond the divine to his humanity. How did he interact with people? How did how could his emotions possibly have played out as he interacted with people from, rulers and kings and all the way down to the lowest people in the social strata. Um, but I think about he did call the apostles and he called them to come out with no guarantees. They did not know what they were signing up for. I bet there were lots of moments when the disciples felt uncomfortable. Um, they didn't get any signing bonuses. They didn't have insurance plans, and they didn't even know where they're going to sleep from one night to the next, or you know how where's our food, our bread going to come from each day. And somehow the Lord took care of them. So, dear reader, I love stories. I love to write stories. I love to hear people's stories. I would love to hear your story about being called out, being called to the unfamiliar, being called to the uncomfortable. Um, I worked at Hallmark for a while and I loved it. And they said, Alice, man, you just all the time listen to people's stories. It's like, yeah. Um, we can learn so much from each other. We can find ways to connect. And I've discovered that when we listen to each other, if we listen long enough and close enough, there's always a point where we can make a connection. So please send your story on over. If you just go next door to the Jesus Connection tab, to the Connect with Alice tab, click on that, go down to email Alice, and if you don't, send me your story. Send me your story. I would love to read your story. And maybe, you know what, maybe you're right in the middle of the story. Maybe your story's only begun with this calling. But I'd love to hear about that too. Just love to hear where you are in this journey we call life. So thanks again for stopping by, dear reader. Appreciate your time here at the Jesus Connection, and we'll chat soon.